There's a fundamental rule in like almost every self-help book, every psychology podcast,
Right.
really just in basic human survival.
Right. Move toward the good stuff.
Move toward the pleasure.
Right.
Avoid the pain. Exactly. It's the basic carrot and stick.
It's evolution 101.
It is. If the stove is hot, you take your hand off. If it feels good, you keep doing it. It's the compass we use for everything. But I've got a stack of notes here today that suggests that compass might actually be broken. Or even scarier, that the north we're following, that pleasure is actually leading us right off a cliff.
That is a terrifying thought, isn't it? That the good feeling is actually the bad guy.
It really is. Today we're doing a deep dive into this fascinating and honestly slightly unsettling essay by the writer and philosopher Pedro Malha.
Right.
It's called When Pleasure Makes Things Harder. And I have to say, reading this, it felt a little bit like being called out. I think I stared at the ceiling for about 10 minutes after I finished it.
You are not alone in that. I think anyone who's ever, stayed in a job too long or a relationship that wasn't quite right, they feel called out by Malha.
Yeah.
Because he's not talking about addiction or hedonism in that classic sense. He's exploring this very specific, very nuanced kind of purgatory.
Which is what?
The difficulty of walking away from a situation that you know is wrong for you just because it feels good in the moment.
So that's our mission for today. We want to unpack why feeling good can be a trap, how pleasure can actually block our clarity, and why staying in the wrong place can feel like a really smart negotiation instead of just a mistake. So let's start with the setup. How does Malha frame this? Because usually, if I'm eating a donut, the pleasure isn't the problem.
Yeah.
Sugar crash later is the problem. But the pleasure itself is just nice.
And Malha is very careful to make that distinction early on. He isn't anti-pleasure. It's all about the context. He describes the arrival of pleasure in these misaligned situations as stealthy.
Stealthy. Okay.
Yeah.
Like it's sneaking in through the back window.
Precisely. He writes that pleasure doesn't, kick down the door and announce I'm a threat. It arrives as warmth. It arrives as ease or a moment of just being met.
He says it enters the room quietly and without apology.
Yes.
That is such a poetic and dangerous image. Because if a situation is toxic, if your boss screams at you or your partner betrays you, that's loud. That's pain.
And we know how to react to pain.
You leave.
Yeah.
Pain clarifies. Pain screams, get out. This is unsafe.
But Malha argues that pleasure does the exact opposite. It rearranges the internal landscape.
Okay, let's drill into that phrase because it's a big one. Rearranges the internal landscape. What does that actually look like?
Well, it's deeper than just confusion. Think about the timeline. You usually start with a moment of recognition, this clear thought that just says, this isn't working.
Right. The deal breaker. The thing that makes you say, I need to go.
But then you have a great Tuesday. You have a laugh over coffee. You feel that warmth that Malha's talking about. And he says that physical experience, that pleasure, it softens the mind. It takes that hard fact, that wrongness, and it doesn't delete it. It makes it quieter.
So the red flags don't disappear. They just sort of fade into the background, like turning the volume down on a radio.
They recede. That's his word. And this is where the trap snaps shut. The question you're asking yourself shifts.
How so?
You stop asking, is this right for me? And you start asking, is this enough?
Oh, I hate that question. Is it enough? It's such a slippery slope.
Yes.
Because enough feels like you're being reasonable.
It does. But enough is a moving target. Malha points out that every time that pleasure hits, every time you get that little hit of dopamine or oxytocin from a nice interaction, you unknowingly adjust your definition of enough just to accommodate it.
So you're lowering the bar just enough so the pleasure can clear it.
Exactly. You're actively negotiating against your own best interests. You're sitting at the table, bargaining yourself down, like, okay, the job has no future, but the free snacks are amazing.
And you feel smart doing it. That's the worst part. You feel like you're being nuanced or realistic.
Right. Well, nothing is perfect. Look how good this moment is.
Which brings us to boundaries.
Yeah.
We love talking about boundaries. But Malha suggests pleasure dissolves them in a really specific way. He talks about doubt entering clarity.
Yes. This is a crucial mechanism. If you want to know why you stay stuck, this is it. Pleasure doesn't argue with you. It doesn't stand up and say, hey, your intuition is wrong. This is actually perfect.
So it's not gaslighting you. It's not telling you that you're crazy.
No, not directly. It's more subtle. It just questions the authority of your intuition. It suggests that the discomfort you're feeling, that gut instinct to leave, maybe it's something that can be managed.
It says maybe this misalignment isn't a deal breaker. Maybe it's just A challenge to be held.
Or that it can be outweighed by the good times, like a scale.
Right.
And that leads to what Malha calls the pause. This, for me, was one of the most profound parts of the essay. He argues that pleasure inserts a pause between recognition and response.
Break that down for me. Recognition versus response.
Okay, so you see the problem. That's recognition. This is bad. Normally, the next step is response. I leave, but pleasure steps in and just hits the pause button right in the middle.
And what are we doing in that pause? Just hanging out.
We're hoping, but it's a very specific and very dangerous kind of hope. It's not the loud hope that, everything will be perfect one day.
How about that?
No. It's a quiet willingness to see if things might change. It just buys time.
So it's a delay tactic.
It's a delay tactic that feels virtuous. There's a line in the text. I actually wrote it down because I wanted to get it exactly right. Mahal says, pleasure reframes endurance as generosity.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
That hits hard. Reframes endurance as generosity.
Think about how we want to see ourselves. We want to be good people. We want to be patient partners, loyal employees, supportive friends.
Of course.
So when we endure a difficult situation because there are moments of joy, we tell ourselves we're being generous, we're giving it a chance, we're being the bigger person.
We're equating putting up with stuff with being kind. And we think leaving makes us cruel and staying makes us noble.
Exactly. But Malha argues that often this isn't generosity, it's self-abandonment. We are abandoning our own needs, but we've dressed it up in this costume of patience so we don't have to feel like victims.
That is heavy.
Yeah.
It really flips the script on the idea of working on it. Because sometimes working on it is just waiting for it to magically fix itself while I enjoy this nice dinner.
That's a harsh truth, but yes. And we use the enjoyment as proof. Malha calls it the evidence trap.
The evidence trap.
We look at a moment of laughter or great chemistry and we say, see, this is evidence that there's potential here. This is evidence of depth.
But is it? Or is it just a laugh?
Usually it's just evidence of enjoyment. You can have incredible chemistry with someone you absolutely cannot build a life with. You can have a hilarious lunch with a boss who refuses to promote you. The pleasure is real, but it isn't structural. It doesn't fix the foundation.
It sounds exhausting to live like this. Just this constant calculus. Is the fun worth the pain? Is the nice weekend worth the bad week?
It is exhausting, and Malha describes it as an internal civil war, which I think is why people in these situations look so tired, even if they're not in an active crisis. It's not a conflict between a truth and a lie. It would be so much easier if it was. If you knew it was a lie, you'd leave.
It's a conflict between two truths.
Correct. You have the accountant of limits in your head, the part of you tallying up all the missing needs, the red flags, the logical reasons to go.
And then what?
And then you have the scorekeeper of pleasure, the part counting the hugs, the bonuses, the inside jokes. And both of them are telling the truth.
They're just screaming over each other. We have to leave, but it feels so good.
And you're stuck in the middle. To admit the situation isn't enough. It feels like you're betraying the pleasure. You feel ungrateful. But to only focus on the pleasure feels like you're betraying your own standards.
So you're just paralyzed. You can't move left or right.
And Malha lays out the choice, and it's pretty grim. Option A, you stay. That means you honor the pleasure, but you have to tolerate the lack. You have to eat that not enough every single day.
And option B.
Option B, you leave. You honor your boundaries, but you have to relinquish the enjoyment. You have to walk away from that warmth.
Neither of those feels like a win.
No, neither feels clean. Both carry a huge sense of loss. And that's why we drift. We're just waiting for a third option that doesn't exist, where we get to keep the pleasure and fix the problem.
You mentioned drift. I want to talk about that because that feels like the real danger zone. It's one thing to make a bad choice. It's another thing to just float.
Mahler writes about the particular loneliness of the drift. Because from the outside, your friends look at you and they say, it's simple. If it's bad, leave. If it's good, stay.
Right.
But from the inside, the whole thing is held together by what he calls small concessions.
Small concessions, just giving up an inch here, an inch there.
And it's incredibly isolating because it's hard to complain about something that feels good. How do you explain to your friends that you're miserable in a relationship that looks perfect on Instagram?
You can't. You feel like a brat. You feel like you're complaining about having too much champagne.
You feel naive or like you're compromising yourself, so you keep it private. And that privacy lets the situation just continue.
So how do these things end? Is it an explosion?
Rarely. Malsa suggests the answer isn't an explosion. It's usually a fade, a drift.
The line between choosing to stay and just not leaving gets totally erased.
That is the scariest sentence in the essay for me. The difference between active choice and passive inertia, it just disappears. And this leads to what he calls the quiet erosion of self-trust.
Oof. Erosion of self-trust. That lingers.
It does. You start to wonder, why isn't my knowing enough to make me move? You know, the stove is hot, but the warmth is nice, so you just keep your hand there. And eventually, you stop trusting your own survival instincts. You start to think maybe you're the one who's broken.
Which leads right to the blame game. Because when you're in that headspace, it is so easy to villainize the other person. They're manipulating me with this pleasure.
Or to villainize yourself for being weak.
Yeah.
But Mala is adamant about this. There is no clear villain, and this is so important for you to hear if you're in this situation. You are not stupid, and the other person isn't necessarily a monster.
But the pleasure isn't a trick. It's not a trap laid by some hunter.
No. Mala says the pleasure isn't lying. It's not a decoy. And the other person, the partner who can't commit, the job that can't promote you, they aren't necessarily misleading you. They might be giving you exactly what they have to give.
They're offering you a cup of water. It's real water. It's just you need an ocean.
That is a fantastic analogy. The water is wet. It's refreshing. It's not fake water, but it is not an ocean. The difficulty comes from that gap, the one between what is given and what is wanted.
And the pleasure.
Mala says pleasure bridges that gap without closing it.
Bridges it without closing it. That's the key. It makes the distance feel crossable just for a moment.
Exactly. It connects you. It anchors you to the present, which brings up the comparison trap. Why do we stay? Because the pleasure is real, and it's now. The alternative leaving is theoretical and in the future.
Better the devil you know. Or better the joy you know.
We will almost always choose a tangible, partial happiness in the present over a theoretical, complete happiness in the future, because the future is a total unknown. Leaving means stepping into a void. Staying means stepping into a warm, albeit slightly cramping, room.
And over time, that room gets smaller. Malha mentions that the pleasure eventually changes, doesn't it? It stops being just fun.
It starts to carry weight. He writes that the pleasure no longer feels light. It starts to carry the burden of what it's compensating for.
So the nice dinner isn't just a dinner.
No. It's the thing that has to make up for the lack of communication. The bonus check isn't just money. It's the apology for the burnout.
That's a lot of pressure to put on a bowl of pasta or a paycheck. Be delicious enough to make me forget I'm unhappy.
And it ruins the pleasure. You start to resent the very thing that was making you stay because you realize it's the bars of your own cage.
So we've painted a pretty bleak picture. We're drifting, we're eroding our self-trust, we're trapped by warmth. Usually this is where we'd pivot to, here are the 5 steps to break free. But Malha doesn't really give us a checklist, does he?
No, and I think that's why this piece resonates so much. It's not a how-to, it's a how it is. He doesn't offer a solution. He offers what he calls tenderness.
Tenderness.
Yeah.
Toward whom? Ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
The first step isn't to aggressively pack your bags and storm out. It's to stop beating yourself up for staying. We have to acknowledge that pleasure actually reshapes our internal calculus. We aren't being stupid, we're being human. Our biological wiring is being hacked by something very powerful.
So the takeaway is awareness.
Huh.
To just name the beast.
To name it. To admit to yourself, I am staying because this feels good, even though I know it isn't going anywhere. To understand that feeling good doesn't always mean things are right.
That is a hard pill to swallow for a culture that worships vibes. We want the vibe to be the truth.
But sometimes the vibe is just a detour. Malha suggests that maybe real maturity isn't about resolving every contradiction instantly. It's about having the capacity to sit in that uncomfortable space between satisfaction and unease.
Just sitting in the mess without trying to fix it or ignore it.
Precisely. Sometimes you stay until you just can't anymore. Sometimes you drift until you hit a shore. But if you can understand why you're drifting, that it's the pleasure keeping you there, not some hidden potential for change, that is the beginning of clarity. That's how you eventually get out.
It removes the shame. And I guess once the shame is gone, it's easier to actually move.
It is, because you're no longer fighting a war against yourself. You're just observing the reality. You stop negotiating and you start seeing.
There is one final idea from the essay I want to leave everyone with. It's the idea that leaving isn't just about escaping the bad.
Yes. This is the thought that really lingers for me. We often think, I need to leave because this is hurting me. But Malha reminds us that leaving is also about walking away from the good.
Which feels completely counter-revolutionary. It feels like madness.
It is. But he wonders if the real bravery isn't in escaping the painful parts, but in voluntarily walking away from the pleasurable parts because you really trust that you can survive their absence.
Walking away from the warmth because you know you need to find your own fire.
Beautifully put. It's choosing the unknown over the good enough, and that is terrifying.
But necessary.
But necessary.
Well, if you are currently stuck in that warm drift, hearing the music but seeing the exit sign, we hope this deep dive gave you some vocabulary for what you're feeling. You're not crazy. You're just negotiating with a very charming lawyer named Pleasure.
And you're not alone in it.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.